All right, welcome everyone to week 11. We are learning Understanding Judaism, the Basics of Deed and Creed by Rabbi Benjamin Blech, who was a teacher of mine at Yeshiva University. We are learning in the merit of a recovery for our friend Aviva Galia Basima. We have also been learning successfully in the merit of powder, and we've been having some good weeks lately. So I hope this learning continues to have positive effects on both fronts. We've been talking for a while about some pretty heavy topics. When can you kill someone? What is the punishment for hurting someone or poking out their eye? When is it better to die than commit a sin? And those are important topics, but for the areas where we talk about it's better to die than to commit the sin, there are only three topics, three sins that are so serious. So it almost puts a little bit of the wrong focus on what we're trying to understand in terms of the fundamentals of Judaism. And so for that, we're going to switch over. Interestingly, we are on chapter 18. 18, we talked about gematria before, the numerics. 18 is chai. Chai means life. So I don't know if Rabbi Benjamin Blech was doing a little inside joke here by making chapter 18 titled Health is a Mitzvah. And for those of you that recognize that word chai, life, does anybody want to chime in a word that sounds like chai that we say at parties? The root of the Panina got it right, and that is l'chaim, l'chaim. And if those of you who have seen Fiddler on the Roof, l'chaim to life, l'chaim to life. So chai, the root word of l'chaim, the lamed la is two, chai is life, and the ym at the end would be plural. So to life, broadly speaking, and that's why we drink. And because the musical interlude was so popular last week, we're going to have a short musical interlude in the middle of tonight's class that gets into that when it's topically relevant. But chapter 18, which is chai, which is life, is about the fact that health is a mitzvah and life is paramount. In 610 out of the 613 mitzvos, we live for them rather than die for them. And not only that, the preservation of life takes precedence over everything else. In Hebrew, pikuach nefesh, saving a life, dohe ahakol, is more important than anything else. A Jew may not consider life merely as a fleeting interlude before the far more important reunion with God after death. Life is to be treasured, guarded, and valued as the ultimate good. And we're going to get into why that is and practically why that is, what it means, and how that fits into Jewish theology. And as we do often in this book, we do some comparative religion. We compare it to Christianity. And as Rabbi Blech does in the book, I'm going to try to be sensitive. We're not trying to put down one religion or the other, but we're making distinctions between the two different approaches to life and death. There is a mitzvah in the Torah that says, "Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves," from Deuteronomy. The admonition to guard one's health is the whole theme of what we're going to do here. And we've been talking about the forefathers. We've been talking about Abraham. Now, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, or Yisrael, as we talked about last week. Abraham, this is way before we got the Torah, before we got the Bible, historically in time. Abraham was not there for the Torah. But he kept the mitzvos of the Torah. He was so intellectually, logically, spiritually heightened that he was able to basically logically infer what the commandments of the Torah were. So while he was not commanded the 613 mitzvos, he was on a level that he understood how we should live. And he inferred what the mitzvos are, and he kept them. But there was one mitzvah that he did not keep on his own, voluntarily. And that is, in the story of Abraham, we know that, we talked about this in week 2 or 3, that he had a bris, he had a circumcision, which is the covenant. Now, obviously, the circumcision was commanded in the Bible, which came much later. But Abraham knew all the commandments, so why didn't he circumcise himself until God told him to? Does anyone on the Teams meeting or in the room want to chime in as to why that might be? Why did he keep basically all of the other commandments, but he didn't keep circumcision, which is a big one, until God told him to do it.
Nobody to do it.
Nobody to do it. That's a good one. He could have hired someone. He could have done it himself. I don't know. Did he do it himself?
That's pretty tough.
But no, that's not the answer. So we're not going to get too technical there. But that's a good try. The reason Abraham did not circumcise himself because it was dangerous. He could have lost his life. He could have gotten infected, and because it was only voluntary, because he wasn't commanded these things, he kept all the other commandments. He knew, the sages say, he knew about circumcision and understood the importance of it. But if he wasn't the recipient of a command to do something risky to your body, he wasn't going to do it because he understood that life comes first. And he waited until God said, hey, circumcise yourself, where God didn't have to come and give him the other commandments, but he waited until he was commanded to do it. And then when he was commanded to do it, then he was able to take that risk of his life because God was telling him to do it. But he couldn't just do it voluntarily. That's an example of kind of how Abraham understood that we put life first and we don't do things that endanger our health. And we're going to get into more of that. But there is this concept of a fear of death. We don't, in Judaism, we don't, we're about life. And there's a theological reason for that. Now, on the one hand, there was a Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very ill, and one of the rabbis, Rabbi Haya, came to visit him. This is a story in the Talmud. And he said, why are you crying? He said, well, I'm going to die. And he said, you're a great man. You're about to be reunited with God. You have a life full of good deeds. Why are you crying? You're about to get your reward. I understand you're not happy to die, but you should be, someone who is so spiritually in tune as you are should almost feel a sense of relief that you're getting a release from this world, and you'll now be able to enjoy the merits of all the things that you did. And Rabbi Hanassi said, in answering why he was upset, he said, I am weeping because the Torah and the meritorious deeds that I shall no longer be able to perform. And we have a chance during life, opportunities in life. It's interesting, it's about to be February 29th. It's like an extra day, if you will, at least on the secular calendar. So people are saying, what are you going to do during the extra day? Which is kind of, I think, silly. But I think it is an opportunity to think about what we do with our time. And in Judaism, we have a life that we have to live, and we can't earn credits, if you will, after our life. There's an interesting story. We talked about the mashal, about the story that comes to teach a lesson. It's not necessarily a true story. There was a very wealthy man who was not a good man. You can be wealthy, and we're going to get into that actually. You can be wealthy if I were a rich man, going back to Fiddler. But if you're there was a person who was very wealthy and he was a bad guy. He did not have many good deeds on his ledger, and he had lots of bad deeds on his ledger. And when he died, he was kind of waiting in line to have his exit exam, if you will. How did you do? And he saw that the people who did good things were going to a good place, and the people who did bad things were going to a bad place. And he saw that people who had given charity had tremendous influence on the divine decree. We talked about that early in the session about prayer, tshuva, returning to God and atoning for your sins, and charity will take away the evil decree. We say that on the high holidays. And he saw that, in fact, people who gave charity were given a big free pass. Gifts given during one's lifetime could outweigh many sins. And so when it was his turn to stand before the accuser, he said, "It is true, I may have not done all I should while I was on earth, but permit me to take out my checkbook and write a significant sum for worthy institutions, and let that be added to my ledger." To which the heavenly courts replied, and I quote, "Here, we do not accept checks. We only accept receipts." So, it's a fanciful story, but it gets along the point that we have time in this world to do good deeds, and after our time is over, the time stops. I almost see it like a video game, and during the video game, you're getting all these points, And when the video game's over, when your 3 lives are over, you can't get more points. In Judaism, we believe that afterwards you will receive reward for everything you've done, but you can't add on to it after the game's over, if you will. And in fact, it says in Ethics of Our Fathers, the Pirkei Avos, better is 1 hour in the world to come than all the goodness of a lifetime here on earth. That after you've died, if you have done good things, just an hour of that, soaking that in, is more valuable than like a whole life of skiing powder on a bluebird day. Like, the best thing you could imagine, 1 hour of the world to come will be better than that. But we don't think about the world to come. We're not living for the world to come, and that's where we get into the distinctions between Christianity and Judaism, is that death is, in our view, is the termination of opportunity. And if you follow that logically, suicide becomes an unspeakable crime. And if suicide is a sin, hastening one's demise is equally sinful. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves. We must do everything in our power to see to it that our days on this earth be extended. So health is a mitzvah. Taking care of your health, exercising, eating healthy, mental health included. All of that is an important part of the Jewish religion. And there's a parallel between our body and our soul. And in Judaism, they go together. We connect the body and the soul. And in order to purify our soul and do mitzvos and learn Torah, we have to take care of our body. And that's not like a bug. That's a feature. That's something that we want to have, is connecting those two. So sometimes I think people think that in Judaism we don't really care about how we live and our health. It's all about the future and doing mitzvos. That's not the case, because if you don't take care of your health, you won't be around long enough to add up all those points in that video game. And in fact, the Talmud affirms that laws relating to health are a category of severity transcending those dealing with ritual prohibitions. So taking care of your health is actually more important than the ritual prohibitions. In fact, there's a concept. Battery power is down to 15%. If you guys are doing any better on the Teams meeting, in the Gemara of Hulin, more stringent are the laws of danger than those relating to the religiously forbidden. In the realm of the forbidden and permissible, we are taught the concept of nullification, bittul. So the classic example of bittul, nullification, is if you're cooking a big pot of chicken soup, and you're in the kitchen and it's hectic, and a little drop of milk spills in. Maybe a kid comes running in and splashes, and we can't mix meat and milk. So if you've got a big pot of meat and 1 drop of milk, and we don't mix the two, there is an idea of nullification, and the biggest type of nullification is 1 in 60. So if there's 60 ounces of soup and 1 ounce or less of milk, and we didn't do it on purpose, that's important, didn't do it on purpose, that milk becomes nullified, and you could eat all 61 ounces, say 60 ounces of meat and 1 ounce of milk, and it goes in accidentally. You now have 61 ounces of food. You can eat all 61 ounces of those food. The milk is nullified, it disappears, so to speak. And obviously you can't do that on purpose. So that's the idea of nullification. So wait till you hear this. In the realm of the forbidden and permissible, we are taught the concept of nullification. If a forbidden food falls into a larger mixture of permissible food, a ratio of 61 is sufficient to nullify its effect. Not so, however, if the danger is one relating to health. Here, no quantity is considered too small to signal danger. So let's just say someone might have had a heart attack on Shabbos. Shabbos, you can't use the phone. You can't get in the car and drive on Shabbos. And you say, well, I'm not sure it was a heart attack. Maybe like 1 in 100 chance it was a heart attack. 1 in 60 chance it was a heart attack. We don't nullify that risk. We say, There is no nullification. If there's a 1 in 100 chance that this person needs to go to the hospital now or needs to call 911 now, we violate the Sabbath. These are the commandments that we live for. We don't die for them. And not only do we live for them and not die for them, but we don't have this concept of nullification. So we're less strict about mixing meat and milk accidentally because we have nullification than we are if someone is in danger and maybe there's only a 1 in 100 chance that they're going to die from this if you don't call 911. You call 911. We don't nullify that risk. That's a big concept, that you can break Shabbos for that, to save someone's life. Pikuach nefesh, saving someone's life, is more important than everything else, including breaking the Sabbath. And in fact, if you're in synagogue, and the whole community is in synagogue, and someone is sick, and there's a chance that they may die, and because the ideal is to save a life, you can call from the synagogue for 911. But you know who would make that phone call? Would it be like the guy who's not really keeping Shabbos anyway? No. Would it be the son of the person who was sick? No. You know who would do it? The rabbi up on the stage in front of everybody would call 911, because it's not like he should be embarrassed that he's breaking the Sabbath. He's teaching the community a lesson that we put life first. So the rabbi, whoever can get to the phone first, really. But it's not as if we should be embarrassed by it or say, oh, you're not really that important or you're not religious anyway. No. The person who can make that phone call first does it, because that's keeping with the proper way. So he writes, body and soul in Judaism stand in a special relationship, as we were talking about before. And Maimonides, who we've talked about previously, was a rabbi, but he was also a physician with the limited scientific knowledge we had at the time. And he taught that one acts piously by keeping the body healthy and strong, even as one must purify one's soul through study and mitzvos. Quote, since it is impossible to have any understanding and knowledge of the Creator when one is sick, it is man's duty to avoid whatever is injurious to the body and cultivate habits that promote health and vigor. That is from the Halacha Deo, chapter 4. Judaism and Christianity do not approach the relationship between body and soul in the same way. The New Testament, Christianity, places the spirit and the flesh in opposition. So in Christianity, spirit and flesh are against each other. They're in conflict. The tension between them cannot be solved by cooperation. The holy man must learn to negate the demands of the body. Galatians, live by the Spirit, and then you will not need to indulge your physical cravings. For the physical cravings are against the Spirit, and the cravings of the Spirit are against the physical. The two are in opposition. That is the Christian view. The body and the soul are in opposition. When a Christian remembers the crucifixion, it is not simply a historic event describing the manner in which his deity faced death, but also a theological ideal for his disciples in terms how to properly live a life. Galatians again, they that are of Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passion and desires. Crucify the flesh because it is the enemy of the soul. The ascetic is a saint, and the holy man wears a hair shirt tearing away at the flesh. In Judaism, the ascetic is a sinner. The flesh is the handiwork of God and no less sacred than the soul. Matter and spirit complement each other, since one cannot exist without the other. It is a crime to despise and degrade the body through which the spirit must manifest itself. So if we're going to do good deeds, we have to take care of the body to do it. So there is an interesting commandment that we wear something called tzitzis. You may have seen the prayer shawl that has the fringes on it. And there are particular laws about that, some which are we don't know enough to keep them properly today, but there is this concept of techelet. It is a blue dye that is dyed onto one of those strings, and it's maybe from some sea animal.
Just one string.
So there are 7 strings, and then there's the one that is blue. Why is it blue? Because blue resembles the color of the ocean, and the ocean resembles the sky, and the sky resembles the divine throne. That is why the Torah commanded us to wear them, so that when you look upon it, and this is from the Shema, that when you look upon it, you will remember to do all the commandments of the Lord and will not follow your heart and eyes, which will lead you astray. But If the blue is what reminds us of God, then why not have all the strings of that color? Right? Why only one string is blue? If the purpose is to remember the heavens, why should 7 other strands represent the purity of whiteness on the earth? They should all be blue. So there is a great thinker, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who was from Germany, lived in the 1800s. He explains the techelet, the blue dye, represent the soul. They are the reminders of heaven. But a Jew does not only aspire to heaven. He takes that one string, the heavenly blue one, and winds it round the other 7, representing the 7 days of creation, the world as we know it. The material things of this world, the body and the flesh, which we would think at first glance are removed from the Almighty, these are the very things around which we must wind the sky blue thread of the soul. The thread of the blue sanctifies the world. The world and the spirit are not in conflict. They can be made to cooperate. So the idea is that God created the world in 7 days, in 6 days and rested on the 7th. We are trying to be like God. And the idea is that we are in the earth. We are on earth. We're not heavenly creatures. But we can take the 8th and wrap it around the 7. The 7 is like the natural period of time, the week. And the 8th is like that beyond us. And God created the world. And I don't know if we talked about it last week, but one of the names for God is Shaddai. And the word die doesn't mean die. And we have funny stories about that. But the word die means enough. There's a famous song on Passover, Dayenu. What God did for us is enough. And the name Shaddai is a godly name that God created the world, but he didn't perfect the world. We talked about that. He gave it over to us to perfect. So the God of enough. So God created the world. He did it in the 7 days, and then he brought us in and said, you guys perfect it. God said, I'm not going to finish the job for you. We're here on earth to do these things. We're not like coming into a perfect world. Our job is to perfect it. So that brings us to chapter 19, Enjoy Life on This Earth. In the introductory class, in the promo video for this class back in early December, mid-December, I said that we are going to explain that skiing is a mitzvah. Or I asked, is skiing a mitzvah? Okay? Well, spoiler alert, yes, skiing can be a mitzvah. God gave us this world, and we are not to separate ourselves from it. Unlike Christianity, where the ideal is to separate from the world, our ideal is to participate in the world. God created these pleasures for us, these good things all around us, and it's not for us to dismiss ourselves from them. But there is a concept in Judaism called Nazir. And a Nazir, does anyone know heard of that? A Nazir is a person who takes a vow. A vow is a very serious thing in Judaism. It's not just like a promise. It's like I'm swearing on this. In fact, the Hebrew word for vows and all of these swearings that we do is you make a neder, a vow. And on Yom Kippur, we have a prayer at the beginning, right, that we nullify the vows. Kol nidre, all of the vows, and all these other types of promise, we invalidate them. We say, in case we accidentally made a vow, now we're going to say these aren't valid vows. We're disowning those vows. A neder, a vow, is seen as very serious. But there is a concept in Judaism called a nazir. That is a person who, in order to connect better with God, will make a vow to avoid wine, anything from the grape. Can't even eat a grape, certainly. But the point is he can't drink wine, and he can't cut his hair for a period of time. He is a nazir. He has sworn away these two things, and he does it to form a better connection with God. So you think, a nazir, wow, that's a good person. He's not even going to have wine. And the haircut, it signifies that you're separating yourself from society, from other people. You just kind of let the hair grow wildly. Wine gladdens the heart of man. Long hair, even as for the mourner, represents a desire to avoid human contact. The Nazir is willing to do all of this for the sake of God. Yet when he concludes this period of time, the end of his nazirship, if you will, the Torah teaches us that he must bring a sin. This is during the time of the temple. He must bring a sin offering. Wait a second. I thought this person just sacrificed his ability to drink wine or even eat grapes, his ability to socialize and have this long hair. Why does he have to bring a sin offering as if he did something wrong? Well, the answer to that is in the Talmud. Were the restrictions found in the Torah not sufficient for you? Like, don't we have enough laws for you to connect with God? All 613 of them are for your connection. A mitzvah, a commandment is a connection to God. All 613 weren't enough. You needed to be special and not have wine and not socialize with other people. That's not who we are. The Nazirite becomes a paradigm for Judaism's view of pleasure. If the Nazir who abstained only from wine needs atonement, how much more so he who abstains from all pleasurable things, is the rabbinic conclusion. And in fact, the Nazir who does this thing to connect better to God, not drinking alcohol or wine, is considered a sinner. So we're going to get into things like drinking alcohol. And we've talked a little bit about wine is important, but all alcohol. And there's a cute little musical interlude from a Jewish rapper named Ari Lesser that talks about alcohol. And we're in the month of Adar, the first of 2 months of Adar, and Purim will come out in under a month. And on Purim, it is a commandment to get drunk, so drunk that you can't tell the difference between the blessings of Mordechai and the curse of Esther. And there are all sorts of points in the Jewish calendar and the Jewish life cycle where we do drink alcohol. From the time somebody is born, when a boy is born on the bris, on the 8th day, on that circumcision, it is traditional to dip some cotton that the moel, the circumcised, the person who does the bris, dip it in wine and let the baby suck on the wine at 8 days old. Don't tell family services or the but yeah, so at 8 days old the Jewish boy starts a little bit of wine to alleviate the pain from the circumcision. Right after the circumcision he gets a little bit of wine, just like, not a significant amount. And all throughout the Jewish holidays and life cycles there is wine. And here is someone who you can tell by his appearance is quite religious, and he has a cute little song about drinking. It'll be about just over 3 minutes.
Well, I don't remember, but I have been told. First time I got drunk, I was 8 days old. Son of Abraham, I didn't waste no time sipping wine at my breast just to ease my mind. Sobered up after that, I spent 12 years clean, but I fell off the wagon when I turned 13. Couldn't see rated R movies or drive a car, but my bar mitzvah had an open bar. They say that day I became a man and I had to obey all of God's commands. Now it's true, there's things we don't do as Jews, but Hashem doesn't mind if we use some booze. Drink responsibly, you gotta stay alive. Don't drink too much, don't drink and drive. For some folks, alcohol can be deadly, but if you drink to life, you can drink with me. L'chaim, a toast to the host and the guest. L'chaim, b'levracham, may you all be blessed. L'chaim, tovim, u'l'shalom, for peace. L'chaim, may good things only just increase. L'chaim, with wisdom, awareness, and wealth. L'chaim, to happiness, healing, and health. L'chaim, to family, the kids, and the wife. L'chaim, my friends say, l'chaim to life. Shabbat is a great excuse to let loose. No need to make kiddish on fruity grape juice. Pop open your finest Pinot or Merlot and keep pouring more till that cup overflows. We celebrate Pesach in the springtime. No grain alcohol, but wine is just fine. They call it Passover because everyone passes out over dinner from chugging 4 glasses. All 7 days is a coat. I'm tipsy, hanging outside in my hut like a gypsy. Ain't got a roof, but I can't complain. If it showers, I just get sloshed in the rain. On Shmini Atzeres, the drinking gets careless. Head starts spinning, losing self-awareness. We all dance the horror while a guy in a fedora pours a lot of shots for some more Simchas Torah. 14th of Adar, wherever you are, every shoe bar and wine has an open bar. Cause on Purim we drink till we don't know why. Haman's curse is any different than blessed is Mordechai. L'chaim, a toast to the host and the guest. L'chaim, b'levracham, cause may you all be blessed. L'chaim tovim, ule shalom for peace. L'chaim may good things only just increase. L'chaim with happiness, healing and health. L'chaim with wisdom, awareness and wealth. L'chaim to family, the kids and the wife. L'chaim, my friends say l'chaim to life. By my wedding, the rabbi passed me a cup overflowing with wine, and he said bottoms up on an empty stomach. That broke my fast. The first drink of the day, but it wasn't my last. Every happy occasion and celebration is cause for a little intoxication, cause the Rambam says since temple times you won't find any joy if you don't have wine, but it also brings relief from the grief when my loved ones die. Life seems so brief, but I still do them right. Light a candle, recite Kaddish, and say l'chaim on the yearly yard site. No wealth in the grave, so I buy that top shelf. I'ma drink for the dead till I'm dead myself. So if I don't outlive you, when my soul is delivered to God, give a toast and get drunk in my shiver. L'chaim.
So maybe that's a little bit extreme, but the idea is that alcohol is something that we embrace in the religion. From the time you have the bris at the beginning of life, when you die, even after you die, we, on the yard site, on the anniversary of someone's death, in the morning at synagogue, before you have breakfast, we do a l'chaim. L'chaim to life. Right? So we engage, again, we elevate the wine or the liquor, whatever we drink, but we engage with it in a positive way. And if you contrast that with the Christian view of holiness, Saint Anselm, who lived in the 1033 to 1109, was considered the most pious of men because he climbed a tree, built himself a little ledge thereon, and stayed there for the rest of his days. To come closer to God, he felt it necessary to remove himself from the world, separate himself from the community. Hillel the Elder recommends in Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of Our Fathers, do not separate yourself from the community. The goal of the Jew is not to remove himself from earth and reside closer to heaven. It is rather to bring heaven down to earth, to make the teachings of God relevant in human society. You may remember week 2 or 3 of the class, I told the story of I saw a man on the subway, a very pious man reading his Talmud. He was studying the Talmud in the subway. And I'm thinking, wow, like I'm on the subway. I'm just looking around. I'm wasting my time. And here's a guy who's studying the Talmud on the subway in Manhattan, on his way to Brooklyn, probably. And then a pregnant woman got on the train. So I, of course, stood up and gave her my seat. And the pious man, who I thought was a pious man, kept his face in the book. And that disgusted me. I said, that's not what it's about. What is he reading in there that is so important that his mind is nowhere on what's around him? What he's learning is supposed to teach him that when a pregnant woman walks onto the train, you get up and give her your seat. But he was so stuck in his book. That was, we called that the pious fool in an earlier class, when the man was praying by the beach and somebody was drowning in the beach. Oh, I'm praying, I can't interrupt my prayer and save a life. So we're supposed to engage in the world. We're not supposed to be studying the book and ignoring the world around us. We're supposed to engage in the world around us. A hermit does not improve the world. He renounces it. A monk does not affect what happens here on earth. He is content to remain apart from it. Not so a Jew, who is entrusted with the task of perfecting the world in the kingdom of God. The world needs not critical spectators from afar, but active participants from within. Sinai itself serves as the most powerful illustration of the difference between this Christian ideology of separating ourselves, opposition to the body. On the very mountain on which God appeared to reveal his law, Christians have built a monastery. Members of the order take a vow never to leave that holy site. Those who die there are buried within. Generation after generation, the holy brothers have stayed there ostensibly to fulfill the word of the Lord and live life as he would have wanted them to do. In Christianity, is to go on a mountaintop and have this just like little colony of monks where you live on the top of the mountain. Jews do not live in a colony on the mountaintop outside of Park City, right? We engage in the world. And in fact, we don't know where Mount Sinai is. There are different mountains, maybe for tourist reasons they call it Mount Sinai. But that's not just because it got lost in history. The exact spot of our revelation is unknown, and purposely so. God did not want us to mark the mountain or to turn it into a holy ground, for the medium would have become the message. Sinai would have become confused with the purpose of revelation. God asked Moses to come up to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, but then he told him to go down with it, bring it to humankind, and turn the desert of human existence into Holy Land. To stay on top of the mountain is to complete only half the journey. You got to ski to the bottom at the end of the day. Moses had to ascend to receive and to descend in order to transmit. And the Torah is compared to water. Earlier we said the Torah is compared to fire, but it's also compared to water. Why is that? Even as water flows from the top of the mountain down to the lowest valley, watering, nurturing, irrigating, and bringing life to it, so too, if Torah is to fulfill its purpose, it must descend to the lowest levels of earth and infuse them with the spirituality of God. So we don't live separate on the mountain in a spiritual world. We live here. The next section further enforces this point. For the Christian, convent is a holy abode. It is where pious monks and nuns flee from mundane interests and concerns. It is where Sinai is recaptured. For the Jew, solitude goes against the most basic biblical ideas, concepts. Solitude, the being alone, not the mountain next to Brighton. So you can go to solitude, you can live in the colony. If you shall love your neighbor as yourself is the major principle of the Torah, then clearly it cannot be performed in isolation. A person must merge with others and dare not withdraw from the community. All Jews are responsible for one another is a concept that we are all responsible for each other. That implies a relationship of common concern, acceptance of communal responsibility, and living within a social structure where the world is not forsaken as unredeemable, but improved in the hope of bringing about a messianic era here on earth. So where in Christianity they say, my kingdom is not of this world, in Judaism we say, my kingdom is indeed of this world. And it is your role to hasten the coming of that glorious era. The Christian must believe that paradise can only exist in another world because Jesus, having claimed he was the Messiah, nonetheless left the world riddled with war and hatred. For us, Messiah has not yet come. We must help bring him, and we believe that the day can be brought closer if we do God's will here on earth. So we have this time to do positive things. When the Christian crucifies, the Jew sanctifies. What the Christian renounces, the Jew utilizes in order to render it holy. Sex cannot be sinful. It is the source of all life, and life is holy. Everything is created by God, must be used for some divine purpose. Every pleasure in life, and we talked about this on the Tu B'Shvat class, whether it's skiing or whatever our hobbies are, all of these engagements with life are to be used for positive, but are not forbidden from us. And not only are they not forbidden from us, it is forbidden for us, power down to like 9% for those on the Teams meeting, but if not...
WhatsApp video chat me.
WhatsApp video, well, no, because it's multiple people.
It's doing pretty good, though.
But it'll be on YouTube, and we're getting towards the end.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the parable of the Maggid of Dubno. We talked about this very wise man who gave stories that illustrated ideas. He was the one that saw, they said to him, how do you always come up with the perfect parable? And he said, I have a parable for you. What's the parable? Parable is he saw a young man shooting targets in the woods, and he hit every single target. The arrow was in the middle of each and every target. So the man came to the boy and said, how did you do that? How did you hit every target right in the middle? He said, it's easy. First I shoot the arrow, then I paint the target. So this guy was known for coming up with these witty stories that illustrated a broader idea. And he's got one here that relates to this very story. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's a real parable. He said, imagine, if you will, 3 men seated at a table on which rests a full bottle of rare and very precious old wine. One of them is an ascetic. He believes that by depriving the body, one cleanses the soul and thereby comes closer to God. The second is an epicure. one whose belief follows the admonition of Epicurus of old, who taught, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die." He believes the goal of life is to enjoy everything in the here and now. Physical gratification is the primary goal. The world should only be viewed from a materialistic standpoint. Following the natural instincts and desires represents the purpose and function of life. And as you can imagine, the third guy sitting at the bar was a Jew. Joining these two diametrically opposed ideologues is the Jew. He sits down at the table offering wine, symbol of the world and its pleasures. What happens next becomes a paradigm for the three possibilities inherent for dealing with pleasure. You've got the ascetic who's like, I don't want to deal with this world. It's going to poison me. It's all bad, spiritually bad. We've got the epicure, the person who just wants pleasure. The more the better. If God put this here, my job is to enjoy it all with no limits. And then the Jew who's got his own separate category. The ascetic looks at the wine greedily. His drawn, jaundiced face betrays desire. His entire body is painted with unrequited lust. He is attracted to the bottle, feels a hot cloud settling over his mind, but being true to his principles, he overcomes the desire that seethes within him. It costs him strength. He knows that it will leave marks upon his health, that these spiritual pains eat into him with consuming desire, but feeling that if he were to give in to the smallest extent, his desire for greater gratification would then overwhelm him in uncontrollable passion. He was abstaining completely. And this had a toll on him. He has not tasted the wine of this world. He does not comprehend why God claimed, after every act of creation, behold, it was good. Everything that was created, behold, it was good. God, who made the judgment, prefers people to be unaware of it in their encounter with the world. For the ascetic, all goodness has proved to be merely unfriendly temptation. Would that the good were not here, so that he not be forced to encounter it. I don't want it. Don't even show me the wine. Whether the ascetic faces wine or women or food or frivolity, wealth, possessions, his response is always the same. He'll reject everything. The epicure, on the other hand, is repulsed by the sight of a person who rejects the joys of gratification. He can't understand, how can anyone deny himself? So he stretches his feverish hand and fingers, burning with lust, snatches the bottle. In a moment it reaches his lips. He drinks it. The wine flows smoothly into his thirsty throat. His face becomes red as hellish fire. His entire body throbs with joy as the wine continues to flow into him. "It is good, very good," he shouts. His desire does not become satiated, but rather renews itself in an ongoing orgy of unbridled lust. Because happiness and pleasure are his twin goals, he does not stop to question when his pursuit of these ideals turn them into the very antithesis. And obviously he becomes very sick. Too much produces a reaction just the reverse of what he sought. Wanting to feel good, he now feels miserable. Wanting pleasure, he now experiences pain. Queasiness, hangover, inability to function, embarrassment caused by his actions. These are all the results of his unbridled pursuit of the good life. And substitute for wine any worldly pleasure, and the conclusion remains the same. Excessive eating brings on ill health. Sexual surfeit leads to boredom. Those who do not touch the wine at all, or those who imbibe it too freely, the ascetic and the epicure, the two extremes, both leave the table of the world and its pleasures feeling unfulfilled. One is in pain because of his abstinence. The other is ill because of his excess. Neither philosophy of life has faithfully served its disciples. Yet there is one person sitting at the very table. It is in the Jew who accepts the doctrines of his religion and lives in accord with the principles of his faith. He too looks at the wine, wonders what will he do, and then quickly reviews in his mind the relevant Talmudic passages related to this. To torture oneself by not drinking at all is strictly forbidden by God. That is in the Durham, where we talk about the Nazir, the person who says, I'm not going to drink any wine. Every man will have to account for every permissible enjoyment that he denied himself, the Yerushalmi Talmud says. And the Gemara, the Talmud on Sukkot says, it is like one who, when offered a gift, takes it and throws it back at his friend's face. God gave us all of these gifts, and we're going to be so holy that we're not going to enjoy them? The Jew knows he cannot reject the wine. It was made by God. Hence, it could become holy. One may use it for Kiddush, to bless the Sabbath and the holidays, as Ari Lesser said, for all of these occasions. To reject it is to reject God's worth. However, to grab it with animalistic desire, the Jew remembers, is also forbidden. It is necessary first to recite a blessing. He must utter a benediction and reflect upon not only his sense of gratitude to the Almighty for giving him this, but also his recognition of the spiritual purpose implicit in all things created. He will drink, but only after he reflects on God. He will have sexual relations and renounce celibacy, but only within the sacred context of marriage. He will bless and enjoy and then remember religious law, which imposes limitations to prevent excess, the happy medium. So we're going to conclude with another story. This one is from the Midrash about the story of Noah. And interestingly, Noah was the first vintner, the first person to make wine. Before him, nobody made wine. When he planted his first vineyard, the first vineyard in history, the Satan happened to come along at the very moment he was engaged in planting. And the Satan asked, "What is it you are planting here?" Noah responded, "A vineyard." Satan said, "Let's go into partnership in the business of planting a vineyard." Noah could have used some help, so he agreed. And the Midrash says, the story says, that Satan thereupon slaughtered a lamb. And then, in succession, he slaughtered a lion. And then he slaughtered a pig. And then he slaughtered a monkey. The blood of each, as it was killed, he made it to flow under the vine. All these vines were infused with the blood of these different animals. He conveyed to Noah what the qualities of wine are. Before man drinks of it, he is innocent as a lamb. If he drinks it moderately, he feels as strong as a lion. If he drinks more of it than he can bear, he resembles the pig. And if he drinks to the point of intoxication, then he behaves like a monkey. He dances around, sings, talks obscenely, and knows not what he is doing. The Jew will not become an ascetic, but he will guard himself from being a disciple of Epicurus, who became synonymous with the Jewish word for a heretic, which is called an apicorus, that comes from Epicurus. So someone who just is a heretic and says everything isn't true, that is an epicure. A Jew will drink only as much as necessary for stimulation, for refreshment, and for waking the napping organs. He will constantly recall that when he has finished drinking, his mind must be sufficiently sober to recite the prayers after drinking. What is the message of Judaism? Enjoy wine and sex, and wine with Kiddush, sex with Kiddushin, which is marriage, and both of those words are kadosh, holiness. Wealth and possessions, so that you may give charity and know the joy of helping others, enjoying everything about which God said, "Behold, it is good," so that you fulfill the ideal of our faith and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God. So everything in our world, and we talked about this again on Tu B'Shvat, has the potential for good, and we don't separate ourselves from this world. It is our ideal to engage in the world, to elevate this world, to bring heaven down to earth, and we can only do that while we're alive, so therefore we have to take care of our health, and we have to take advantage of every opportunity that comes. Even on the extra day of February 29th tomorrow, we have to take advantage of those opportunities because we know that in the afterlife, they only accept receipts, not checks, not promises that you make then. So with that note, we hope we will, learning in the merit of some more powder we've been getting, and seriously for the continued recovery of Aviva Galia Basima. Thank you everyone for joining class 11. And we look forward to joining you next week for class 12. We are getting close to the end of section 1 of the book, and we are going to complete this season. When we get to the end of that session, there are probably a few weeks left, but we're getting to the end, so let's enjoy it as we finish it up. Thank you, everyone.
We may have to extend the ski season.
We may have to extend the ski season, but we're going to do half the book this season, and hopefully Aviva Galia Basima and David and all of you will be here to enjoy another season next year where we do section 2 of the book. Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on today's topics? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? L'chaim to life, like drink, as Ari Lesser does quite frequently. But those are all examples in that song, which is humorous and enjoyable. Those are all real things, whether it's at the bris or at the bar mitzvah or at the wedding or on Shabbos or on Simchas Torah or on Purim or when someone dies or on their yurtzeit a year later every year. And he says, even when I die at my shiva, when you come to visit my family, I can't take the money with me, so we're going to do top shelf. And it's a legitimate message. I mean, it sounds a little extreme, but it's a legitimate message. So let's have a l'chaim. Thank you to everyone. And I think we're doing l'chaims on Saturday night, Jewish bar night this week. So please RSVP to Jody. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. L'chaim.
Time.